everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Alright, so let's cover some minutia. Some palace intrigue of sorts that doesn't in any way touch the actual issues of society. But whatever, let's touch it. So, a report came out. Trump told Russians that firing nutjob Comey eased pressure from investigation. That's interesting. This is the New York Times. President Trump told Russian official in the Oval Office this month that firing FBI Director James Comey had relieved great pressure on him, according to documents summarizing the meeting. "I just fired the head of the FBI. He was crazy, a real nut job," Mr. Trump said. Mr. Trump said, according to the document, which was read to the New York Times by an American official, "I face great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off." Mr. Trump added, "I'm not under investigation." Yeah, dude, you are still under investigation. Yes, you are. They have a special prosecutor. The conversation during a May 10 meeting, the day after he fired Mr. Comey, reinforced the notion that the president dismissed him primarily because of the Bureau's investigation into possible collusion between Mr. Trump's campaign and Russian operatives. Mr. Trump said as much in one televised interview, but the White House has offered changing justifications for the firing. The comments represented an extraordinary moment in the investigation, which centers in part on the administration's contact with Russian officials. A day after firing the man leading the inquiry, Mr. Trump disparaged him to Russian officials. I have to be honest, man, that is kind of messed up. Calling the man a nut job. The president of the United States fires the head of the FBI. Under normal circumstances, there's a certain level of dignity and respect in the office, even if the things they were doing were grimy and disgusting. Ultimately, there was still a certain level of dignity in the position. He's calling the head of the FBI nut job. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. So this is Trump's reply. He said, "The White House document that contains Mr. Trump comments was based on notes taken from inside the Oval Office and has been circulated as an official account of the meeting." One official reads the quotation in the Times. A second official confirms the broad outlines of the discussion. Sean Spicer, White House press secretary. Sean Spicer is ridiculous. In a statement, he said that Mr. Comey had behaved politically and put unnecessary pressure on the president's ability to conduct diplomacy with Russia on matters such as Syria, Ukraine, and an Islamic State. This is a good point. By grandstanding and politicizing the investigation into Russia actions, James Comey created an unnecessary pressure on our ability to engage and negotiate with Russia. The investigation would have always continued, and obviously, the termination of Comey would not have ended it. Once again, the real story is that our national security has been undermined by leaking of private and highly classified conversations. Now, usually what Sean Spicer is saying can be completely discarded because usually Sean Spicer is absolutely ridiculous. At least every time I've seen him. This is the guy, "These were the largest crowds ever," and protected the president. Backed the president up. Angrily backed the president up in the press room on this whole idea of the largest crowds ever. It is absurd. And he backed that lie up. It's amazing. It was like his first day on the job. Now, what he said, though, does make sense. What he says does make sense. In fact, all of this makes sense. All of this could be true. This is not one of those things where, one person says something else and something completely contradicts it. These things aren't necessarily conflict. So let's get a little context. So early on when this came up, I kind of made this point that we don't necessarily know what went on between Trump and Russia. And even with Comey, it was like this idea, I don't believe anything went on with Trump and Russia. It's possible. I seriously doubt it. Until I see information saying so, I'm going to disbelieve it. In regards to firing Comey, my position was, well, it's very possible he fired him because he couldn't trust him. Can I trust you? Well, I'm investigating you. So yes, I guess the answer is no, I can't trust you. Now, is there an aspect of that where he's firing the guy thinking that he's going to end the investigation? If he is, that is the dumbest. Firing Comey is not going to end the investigation. I never thought that. I've heard outlets say that. I don't know why they said that. There's no way that the president is going to fire the head of the FBI and they're just going to say, "Oh, okay, well, we're just going to give up the investigation." It's like if you're working at a company, you're building a piece of software, you get fired, and they just say, "Oh well, we'll just leave the software here to die." No, they're going to get somebody else to do that job. The person who's coming in behind them is probably going to pick up that investigation. Now, the question becomes, is that person going to be as adamant to find information about it? If that makes sense. Like, Is it going to be politicized, or is it going to be an actual investigation? That's the question. In this particular case, Spicer may be right. Because I've made this argument before even reading this. I made this argument once before that the pressure that the Democrats have been putting on Trump about Russia influences Trump's behavior. You can look at my old videos. I made this point saying you have to push back against narratives. The reason why they say Democrats are tax and spend is because they want to restrain Democrats from spending. They want to use it as political hit, yes, but they also want to restrain behavior of the people, meaning if you fulfill that behavior, then you're the epitome of what these guys are pointing at. Well, same thing with Russia. If they're putting all this pressure saying Russia, 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 and you have all these people, these hillbots, walking around like robots with antennas, oh, Russia, Russia, then yeah, Trump is going to feel a little bit of pressure in the sense of, okay, these guys are screaming Russia at the top of their lungs. They're trying to delegitimize me as a president in the same way I tried to delegitimize Obama with a birth certificate. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable to me. And not just uncomfortable to me from a political standpoint. Any friendship and interaction that I have with Russia is going to be seen through the context of what they're saying about him. Meaning the very act of diplomacy that he wanted to have with Russia, the conciliatory tone, gets tarnished because of the politics. That's the context. That's why when that's what I'm saying, Sean Spicer may have a point. When he's saying, in a statement, he said Mr. Comey had behaved politically. It's not Comey, it's Democrats, but Mr. Comey had behaved politically and put unnecessary pressure on the president's ability to conduct diplomacy with Russia on matters of Syria and Ukraine and Islamic State. That's probably true. That's probably true. Now, not Comey though. Not Comey. I'm saying Democrats. The pressure for this was put by Democrats. Comey was essentially doing his job and making an investigation. It's his job to do that investigation. Whoever comes behind Comey is going to be their job to do that investigation. But Spicer is getting at the heart of something that people kind of just completely ignore. When Trump is interacting with Russia and Syria, he comes in office saying, I want to be friends with Russia. I want to be friends with Putin. I don't think we need to have any kind of conflict. I want to de-escalate around the world. Now, no, he didn't mean that because he started creating grandstanding with North Korea and Iran as soon as he got in office, and also started murdering civilians in other places that Obama was murdering civilians, but at a higher rate. But the one thing he was consistent on was, I would like to be conciliatory with Russia. Democrats use this to try to use it as a political weakness of sorts, bringing up this red baiting and everything else from the McCarthy era, saying, hey, just because this guy is interacting with Russia, this guy is somehow a Putin puppet. Never mind the fact that Democrats have just as many connections with Russia, including this nuclear deal. This stuff is amazing to me. It's like, oh, don't look into our issues with Russia. Only look into Trump's. His ties with Russia are something different than our ties with Russia. So, get out of here. You just don't want to come up with you don't want to own up to the reason why you lost that election. That's all that is. And they're using this purely as a way to tar Trump. I don't like Trump. So don't misunderstand me. I always have to feel like I have to give a caveat when I'm somewhat defending him on this stuff. But Democrats using this as political hay is a problem. It is a political problem. They're using fomenting against another country for political expedience. In this country, they're essentially tying up him in knots, which, look, I don't necessarily mind because I think he's going to do bad things. But they're tying him up in knots in this investigation of sorts. But you must understand there will be true believers. And if you get a true believer who takes office after Trump, you have a conflict right off the bat. With Russia, you're literally pivoted in a way where you're antagonistic against another nuclear nation. If Hillary Clinton would have gotten that office, Hillary Clinton would have likely started a nuclear war. So understand what we're talking about. The reason why I'm adamant about this is because you can put people in positions where you end up in a no-win situation. You end up in a situation where people are compelled in behavior. Not necessarily because they want to do it, but because of the forces pushing against them to do it. World War II. No, not even World War II. Cuban Missile Crisis. There's this amazing scenario where these guys actually thought the world was going to be destroyed. Like literally, nuclear war. They full on thought, this is the time. This is going to take place. Khrushchev is terrified. Absolutely terrified. He was the guy in charge of Russia. He sends a letter. Or somebody sends a letter. It's suspected Khrushchev. And it's this panicked thing of, yeah, we need to bring this back. We need to bring this in. A second letter comes. The hardliners. essentially repudiating everything that was in that first letter and essentially giving across like, you guys can go fuck yourself, and yes, we're ready to do this. Kennedy replied to the first letter that was conciliatory and ignored the second letter. What I'm getting at is, despite what Khrushchev might have wanted to do, the power base in that particular country, the hardliners, were going to get their way. They were going to get their way. Khrushchev's letter was essentially overridden by the hardliners. You get into points where the politics pushes people into a particular position that are gross and disgusting. World War I. You had one country after another with all these alliances. Somebody gets shot. Archduke Ferdinand, I believe, gets shot in Serbia or Croatia. And because of the alliances of each of these countries and because of the politics of each of these countries, you end up with a goddamn world war. Everybody is sitting around like, how the hell did this happen? I'm just saying these things, these events, are not minor. And the politics that the Democrats are using is atrocious. And it is damaging. Not to mention for the damage that it could do in regards to putting us in a conflict. I don't want another Cold War. We are currently in another Cold War. At the very least, whatever you want to say about Trump, he's trying to be conciliatory with Russia. Meaning, he's pulling you back from that idea of a Cold War. Fight him on the domestic front. On this front, in regards to him trying to be conciliatory with Russia, I have no problems. I have no qualms. If something comes up in the investigation where he cheated, based on some kind of Russian help, fair enough. I haven't seen that evidence. We can change our mind when we see that evidence. But right now, what I see is the Democratic Party red baiting mercilessly with no evidence to back it up. Trump had this weird affiliation. He's a businessman. He's going to have ties in Russia. It's from business ties. They've shown nothing to indicate that he was working with anybody to hack this election or hack the Podesta thing. And WikiLeaks has consistently said it wasn't Russia. All these guys have a dog in the hunt to say Russia. Democrats, run-of-the-mill Democrats, the robots, they say Russia because they don't understand how their candidate could lose. Huffington Post, that, magnificent periodical, has said it was a 98% chance that Hillary Clinton was going to win that election. How could she lose? It had to be Russia, right? They don't have to interrogate their ideology. They don't have to interrogate the problems of their party. Nope, simple, Russia. The people, the Democrats themselves, it's easy for them to say Russia because they don't have to contemplate why they lost to a reality show host, why they have no power in Congress, why they have no power in state and local elections. Russia is an easy out. It's an easy out. So, yeah, it's bogus. Sean Spicer may have a point. When you're looking at the story and you're looking at all the things that they're saying, ultimately, get to the heart of the story. They're having an investigation into Trump. Trump fired Comey. Apparently he was bothered by the pressure that was on him from the investigation. Now mind you, this is kind of crazy because it doesn't necessarily get rid of the pressure because there's going to be somebody else. But ultimately, it is restraining his movements in regards to what he can do with Russia. It's like Bill Clinton getting rid of Glass-Steagall, financial reform, if that makes sense. It's like, there's no narrative that's pushing against Bill Clinton for financial stuff. If it was Republican, there's a narrative pushing against him to doing that, meaning he has opposition to do those things because it's running full well into the narrative. That guy's a kleptocrat, that guy's trying to fuck you over, that guy's trying to get rid of Glass-Steagall, that guy's a Republican. That's opposition. Bill Clinton comes in, he's a Democrat. He doesn't supposed to do these things. Oh, Bill Clinton is doing these things, it must be okay. He's supposed to be liberal. It gives you cover. He can't play into the narrative. And because he can't play into the narrative, it constrains his actions. That's what I think. That's what I think. I mean, yes, if he fired Comey, he probably did fire him to some degree because of, this investigation. And again, I said that's a stupid reason to fire him because ultimately somebody else is going to pick up that mantle. But I suspect part of this had to do with trust. Can I trust you? I ain't doing an investigation against you. Okay, you're fired. Who's the next guy? The question is, does Trump take action that tries to prevent the investigation at all? That's when shit gets real. Like, it's one thing for him to say, okay, I'm dissatisfied with Comey for XYZ. If you're in a situation where you're trying one thing after another to stop the investigation, then yeah, that raises an eyebrow. That raises an eyebrow. That's not what's taking place right now, though. Yeah, this is just talking about the FBI investigation. Yeah, I would prefer to be conciliatory with Russia. The Democrats are ridiculous And they're using Russia to this extent, not fully grasping the potential consequences of using Russia in that way. If you have true believers, because mind you, you have a population that are true believers, and they will full well think that there's something going on with Russia in regards to this election, in regards to changing the result of this election. That is a problem. That is a problem. And that is just as bad as all these Republicans walking around thinking people had something to do with 9/11 or Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11. Those things are similar to one another. Yes, one is more gross and more vulgar. But are you telling me that this is not just as gross and vulgar if you're red baiting purely for political reasons? These people know that these are political reasons. The public may not know, but the people who are doing this full well understand what they're doing. They understand politically they're tying him up, so he can't do but so much. They're trying to constrain his actions through these investigations. Now, whether you think that's right or wrong, it's up to you. It seems to be what's taking place. So yes, is he going to try to relieve pressure? Yeah, he is. He's a person. But no, he shouldn't go to the point of trying to end all investigations. That's just going to make him look ridiculous, and it's going to make him look guilty as hell. You would have to let this investigation go through. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think the main part of the story, the interesting part of the story, is Trump interaction with Russia, in addition to how the Democrats are portraying that interaction, if that makes sense. Like, his freedom of movement is constrained. I gave you this way. Do you remember when Obama was running? He was running on healthcare. And I remember thinking, I think I was in Egypt at the time, and I thought, that's a gimme. Of course people want healthcare. Why wouldn't people want healthcare? And Republicans ran this argument against Obamacare. Obama didn't necessarily stand by his product. Democrats didn't stand by the product. And ultimately, they got pilloried by Republican propaganda against Obamacare. Now, at that point, it was running into a narrative. Like, so all of the stuff with Obamacare and everything else, every time the price went up, it goes into a narrative. Republicans said the price was going to go up. The price is going up. Like, the problem is you're running full head into a narrative. You don't want to do that. It's like, it's not necessarily you don't want to do it. It's just, politically, it's a problem. This group says this, and you're doing things to show that you're this. That's what it boils down to. So in this case with Trump, Trump is doing this. Trump is saying, I'm trying to be conciliatory. You would think, yes, that's good. You want him to be conciliatory to Russia. And he gets pilloried by the Democrats for interacting with Russia. I'm making this point that in the same way that happened with Obamacare, they're doing the same thing with Trump and his plan to go with Russia. Obamacare was just a plan. Trump acting with Russia is just a plan. Democrats pillaring it relentlessly to try to make that strength a weakness. It's the same thing that Republicans did with Obamacare, is making strength a weakness. These things are the same. It's politics. It's just politics in different ways, but the strategy, the underlying strategy of what they're doing is exactly the same. So, I think that's the interesting part. It's chess. It's fun. This is palace intrigue. This palace intrigue in no way gets to the actual issues that affect our society. It's theater. It's a circus. So I'll leave it at that. It's not that I don't like these stories. It's just, I'm sick of the way this model is persistent. That's all. I'm impatient by nature. Astrologically, I'm a Aries moon. A double Virgo Aries moon. That is not a settled combination. And it's not a thing for astrology. I'm just saying, for me, that fits me. That's who I am. So to me, it's this thing of, oh man, get this done. Get this done. Let's come together and find a way to change this. This is a circus. I don't really care about this. Yes, I care about it because it can affect people in that sense. But on a higher level, I look at it as, this doesn't matter. This is a circus. If you want to change this, you need to change the model. Meaning you need to get these people out of their office. Meaning you need a movement. I just want the movement. That's all. It's not that the story is bad. The story is interesting for political reasons. But I kind of want to change it. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon.